got one of the largest percentages of foreign-born population of any advanced democracy. London is more, in the last census in 2011, is now a minority-majority city. A minority-majority city. But my wife runs a migration NGO, so you can't criticize me for being anti-migration, okay? I'm telling you what the facts are. London is now a minority-majority city. It's the first major city in Europe to be a minority-majority city. In the census in 2011, 45% of people living in London are British, white British. So this is what we are in London. So, and all the opinion polls are showing, actually, in the World Values Survey, for example, the British public is not racist. We are actually very low on the views of attitudes of British people towards your son or daughter marrying somebody from another country. We are least opposed to that than almost anyone else in the World Values Survey data. So we're very happy with us being a kind of multi-ethnic society. But what has happened as a result of migration are several things that are really significant. So we're seeing, particularly with a downturn in the economy, growing competition for jobs in particular sectors, particularly low-skilled sectors, agricultural labour, building trades, and declining salaries, declining wage rates in a lot of the lower-skilled sectors. Growing competition for public services, for primary school places, for healthcare, for public housing. Because, of course, the government is cutting spending on these issues. So it's not irrational for low-income voters in large parts of the country to say, we're full. Right? So this is what's driving, you understand what is driving this. It's not racism that's driving this. For some people it is, but overwhelmingly, for lower-income people in the UK, it's not racism that's driving this opposition to migration. And migration, if it remains the dominant issue, will be very difficult for the Yes campaign, Stay-in campaign, to win this. And so I'll conclude with just a comment that a lot of the rest of Europe doesn't really quite realise, I think, what potentially this could mean for the rest of Europe if Britain leaves. There's already discussion that if the UK leaves, there'll be pressure for a referendum in Denmark. The Danish People's Party are demanding, in the last election they were saying, we want a similar in-out referendum in Denmark. What happens to Sweden? What happens to Hungary? What happens to other countries who also feel that they're on the second tier of deeper economic and political union in Europe? And what I fear more than anything, Britain itself will survive outside the EU. You know, already we're a globalized economy. We'll be fine. Our GDP will be a little bit lower, but in the great scheme of things, we'll be okay. You know, we'll be like, people say we'll be like Canada to the US, right? Canada's not in the US, but they trade freely with Europe. We'll be the equivalent in Europe. The consequence is not really for Britain, the consequence is for the rest of Europe and for the potential knock-on domino effect or collapse of some basic elements of the European architecture, which is about a collective security and a collective freedom and a collective economic growth in the future. So I'll finish there.
Thank you very much, Professor Simon Hix. As I said, it's a very hot topic. Very, very hot topic. I have to say that I am really very worried about the potential leaving of the UK. You have said UK will survive, but the question is EU will survive. And maybe UK may feel responsible about the future of the EU. I don't know, maybe. You have presented many interesting and real arguments in the favor of leaving the UK. Could you present us maybe at least 3 arguments in favor of staying in the EU?
For the Remain, yeah. So the Leave campaign launched last week. Even the way it works in British law is they cannot actually formally, legally establish these official campaigns that are then officially recognised and get public money until the legislation is passed and the date is set for the referendum. But the Leave campaign already coordinated last week.
Wow.
And so and this was the largest donor for the Conservatives, the largest donor for Labour, and the largest donor for the UK Independence Party all put their money together for this Leave campaign. Nigel Lawson is one of the leaders, Kate Hoey, who's a Labour MP, and probably Nigel Farage will also join, Douglas Carswell, who's the only UK Independence Party MP. So you already have lined up a series of very senior politicians. The Remain campaign launched yesterday, very quickly put together in response. It is going to be run by Lord Rose, the former CEO of Marks and Spencer's, a businessman, probably quite a good thing. And there will be Peter Mandelson, a Blairite, senior politician, former European Commissioner, and there's some senior Conservative MPs. None of them front-bench Conservatives, none of them front-bench Labour, yet. But we have to wait and see. But Rose yesterday made a speech at the launch with all the press, and he said that the argument he is making is a very narrow economic argument. The argument the campaign that they're trying to make is one of, he said, I'm a pragmatist, I'm not an idealist, I'm not in favour of Europe for ideological reasons, I'm in favour of Europe for purely pragmatic reasons. This is about trade and trading, and it will be more difficult for us. And we're a trading economy, and it's good for Britain, it's good for British business that we stay in Europe. And Business for Europe is the business campaign in favour of staying in Europe. So, but I think that's not a strong enough argument. I think we need to make an argument about the risk in a very risky globalizing world, a very uncertain world, with rising threat from Russia and rising economic threat from the growth of Asia and a declining influence of the United States in the world, that we need to make a case that's more a political case for the fact that this is about a collective political and economic security in our little corner of the Eurasian continent. And Britain likes to pretend we could be immune from this, but we're not immune from this. We can't be immune from this. And we will inevitably be drawn into the consequences of this. And as we have previously been drawn into European conflicts, we will inevitably be drawn into this. And so it's in Britain's interest that Europe remains strong. And it's interesting that the only voice we hear in Britain that's making this argument in Britain is the United States Embassy. The US Embassy, the US Ambassador is the only person going around saying, if Britain leaves the US does not want Britain to leave the EU because we do not want Europe to be destabilized in a scary world. And Britain leaving will be a disaster for American interests. And none of the British politicians are willing to make that kind of political argument. So we're not really hearing it yet, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. And now it's time for your questions. So the first one, you can address questions in Romanian language or in English. How do you prefer? And please present. So we'll take the first three questions. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The first one.
Okay, my name is Camille Petrescu, and I'm from Romanian American University, North Part Center. And first I'd like to see that was try to understand how a country that considered the biggest oxymoron of all time, liberté, égalité, fraternité, could live together. And I want to ask, my question basically is, how do you see this election in the Labour Party of somebody who at best can be called a socialist? And if this would contribute to the England being closer to the socialist Europe, or from my understanding, the Scottish separatist movement is tilting more to the left. So here it's a little bit of a confusion factor. Second, as they say, I lived for over 40 years in the United States. And as we know, they say that the United States and England are separated by a common language. And I can understand somehow the American idea of presenting a strong Europe versus Russia. And that's the end of my question, is lately has been a major tilt towards Russia from Europe officially, from Ms. Merkel and the other people involved there. How does England see that, which has been traditionally an ally of the United States? And I can go on for about 2 hours, but I will stop here.
Let me take those two. I'll take that. Yeah, so let me also...
Anyone see questions together?
No, I'm going to take that now because I think this is they're both big questions. Let me. So, what I think I see in Europe is I see different coalitions emerging around different issues, and the interesting thing is it looks like these coalitions are correlated in certain sense. So I think we see an Anglo-Scandinavian, Central and East European coalition, both in terms, this is a kind of the Atlanticist group of European countries. And they're Atlanticist in several senses. They're Atlanticist in terms of them having more liberal views about the market, for example. And they're Atlanticist in terms of security issues, and they're much more pro-American than they are pro-Russian. And I worry very much about the tilt of Germany and France and some of the and Italy attitudes towards Russia. And from London, this plays very badly. We have these oligarchs pushing up house prices in London, and even the Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer, a party funded largely by Russian oligarchs. The Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer has now wants to reform the tax status of these guys, so they have to pay British taxes. So this is how unpopular they have become, apart from the guy who owns Chelsea. So I think that this again is an argument that plays against the Remain campaign, because it plays towards look, we don't want to be part of a continent that is drifting closer towards Russia. And the people like the Central East Europeans I speak to and the Scandinavians I speak to are very worried about what this means for Britain leaving as the voice, the strong Atlanticist voice amongst the big member states. So that I think is how I view it. Jeremy Corbyn, you're not the first person here who's asked me this question. It's interesting how, go around Europe and everyone's obsessed with Jeremy Corbyn. He's a completely marginally irrelevant figure, really. It's inconsequential for the following reason. The real next leaders of the Labour Party did not stand in this election. They are waiting because they know that this person is going to lose. So the three more moderate candidates are all terrible, because the real next generation, Dan Jarvis, Tristram Hunt, Chuka Ramuna, Rachel Reeves, these are the people in the party that everyone says are the potential future leaders of the party. They stood aside because they didn't want to be. It's a poison chalice to become the leader of the party now. This allowed Jeremy Corbyn to emerge as the leader. And for most of the country, he's seen as a Islington, chattering classes op-ed writer in The Guardian. And a lot of the rest of the country are talking at the Labour conference with Labour MPs, telling me that on the doorstep their voters are saying, who is this guy? He's more obsessed with talking about somebody being hung in Saudi Arabia than he is about healthcare in the UK. Well, he looks like a student politician to most Labour voters in the UK. He's to the left of the Scottish National Party in Scotland. The Scottish National Party in Scotland, in the UK, we think of them as Blairites in kilts. They talk left, but actually they're really centrist in what they're doing in public policy terms. For example, they didn't introduce fees for universities in Scotland, which you might say, that's a great thing, but do you know how they paid for it? They cut the number of students in Scottish universities. So the number of students in universities have expanded in England and Wales and contracted in Scotland. So this is, the left party in Scotland. So so they're keeping it as a middle class benefit, essentially. So he's not going to win, and he certainly isn't going to win back all those former dockers and Glasgow steelworkers, and you know, he looks like in a very effete, typical London 1960s. He's like a Danny Cohn-Bendit type guy. I mean, I love Danny, but I am the kind of person that likes this kind of person, but that is not the people Labour need to win back in large parts of the country. So a lot of people are waiting for him to do very badly. Labour are down in the polls since he became the leader. And I'd be very surprised if he's still the leader of the party this time next year. There'll be a footnote in history.
Thank you. My name is Claudia Duran. I'm a researcher at the Center for EU Communication Studies. A few years ago, you wrote that if the EU was scraped off tomorrow, the next day, then 70% should be rebuilt as it is. And my question is, taking into consideration recent developments, recent crises, and the recent talks about the referendum, what would you keep and what would you change? From the British perspective, not necessarily your personal perspective.
Let's take a few.
So, Ambassador Podesta.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I appreciate very much. I am former head of different OEC missions in different parts, particularly in Balkans and in former Soviet area. So my question would be, did you analyze your decision, this is sovereign decision of the sovereign state and its impact from geostrategical point of view? And I will add some elements. For Romania, it's very important what is going to happen in its vicinity. We have Ukraine, we have Russia.